Albert Einstein said that failure is success in progress. This video is about a failure and then rising from the ashes. A project that, well, on the surface seems to have huge upside potential for mankind in general. However, as you and I know, in real life, it is typically those that are in the echelon of the power structure that seem to derive more of the benefits than the rest of us. This is a company that was called Blue Brain. They had a project. This was back in, I think 4 or 5 years ago. Their goal was to build the first virtual brain. Now, it's interesting. You and I have talked about this many times before, and we'll continue to talk about it. This is the new frontier, is the brain, the human brain specifically. Now, on the left, that's the synaptic pathways actually measured by the brain, seen in the brain. The one over on the right is the universe. You know, I did a video that said that I felt that the universe was, in fact, the brain of the infinite being. Who knows? What I do know is this. We have discovered that there are 100 billion neurons in the brain with 100 trillion synapses. Wow. You know, when you think about how a habit is established, it's because you build a synaptic pathway. And the more that you repeat that, the stronger that pathway actually becomes. This is a snapshot of the anatomy and the physiology of the brain at one moment in time. Look at that. That was 1 second. Maybe even less. And ladies and gentlemen, that's us. Now, is that the spirit? Is that the soul? I'm not sure. But I do know this. It is mind-blowing. Because you and I got one of those. All right, so what was the purpose for Blue Brain? Now, they got a lot of money. When I say a lot of money, listen, the EU was funding them to the tune of like $500 million a year. That's a big budget. And just to let you know, we're in the era now of what they call big science, where, you know, science that tackles these complex problems, challenges. And big science, conversely so, also requires big budgets. So Blue Brain Project was an attempt to create a synthetic brain by reverse engineering the mammalian brain down to the molecular level. The project is headed up by the founding director, Henry Markram, and co-founder Felix Schramm and Sean Hill. Using a blue gene supercomputer running Michael Hines neuron software, the simulation does not consist simply of an artificial neural network. No, but involves a biological, realistic model of neurons. It is hoped that it will eventually shed light on the nature of consciousness. And that, folks, is the holy grail of everything. Religion, politics, power, no matter what, pales in comparison to obtaining the goal of being able to capture and then transfer consciousness. That's the goal. So always remember this. You are the one inside your brain. Now, other voices can get in there, other things can get in there, but if you always just remember all of those synaptic pathways that you've laid down, that's you running on it. What I would call the infinite, boundless part of the human spirit cannot be defined. But as great as it is in the largeness, it's also as beautiful in the smallest. So IBM got involved with them. IBM built these supercomputers for the Blue Brain project. Again, the amount of memory processing speeds required is, well, remember, they're trying to build a virtual brain that absolutely duplicates in every, down to the molecule, the human brain. Now, this one has all the way up to the very top, as you can see. The system has 64 racks within it, approximately 65,000 computer nodes with 32 terabytes of memory that can be expanded up to 360 teraflops. And I actually seen the one that now they're into the petabytes. So this is ramping up big time. This again is a picture of a thought of the human brain. Each color represents a different synaptic pathway, different chemical, and don't ask me, I'm not a brain surgeon nor a neuroscientist. I am a layman that, like you, who seeks knowledge and can read. And fortunately, since we have the great God now living called Google, we can now go to the Oracle, and the Oracle will give us whatever we ask. Look at this. Can you imagine trying to map that out? You're going in for a job interview and they hand you this and they say, well, how soon can you map this out? So as you can see by this representation, when we're dealing, for instance, with smell. Now, you would not think that smell has anything to do with heartbeat or the voltage. But yes, it does. It's complex. And this company found that out. Now, they were getting funded from the EU, and as the story goes, and you can check it out for yourself, the founder, who is a genius, apparently doesn't work well with other people, and they failed. But rising from the ashes, have we not heard this through time memorial? Rising from the ashes, lo and behold, there came another initiative. This one is called Brain Research through Advanced Innovative Neurotechnologies, or the BRAIN Initiative for short. This BRAIN Initiative is by no means small. As grandiose as the Blue Brain project was, this one is on hypersteroids. So what's the purpose, the mission statement of the BRAIN Initiative? It aims to develop a detailed understanding of the 86 billion, well, I had said 100, but apparently they may have found something that others didn't, neurons in the human brain. Alzheimer's disease alone has an estimated economic cost of $259 billion this year alone, and this was actually in, I think, 2016, and may exceed $1.1 trillion by 2015. The hope is to develop tools and technologies to identify someone at risk for Alzheimer's or other mental diseases, and use such advanced warnings to develop effective ways of disease prevention. Now, I'll tell you what, I'm behind this 110%. And as you see over on the right, again, just the complexity of what the brain processes in a nanosecond. And anyone who has a family member that has had any type of mental illness, particularly the diseases that I call the soul stealers, those are dementia, Alzheimer's, where they steal the memories. Once your memories are gone, folks, you're gone too. It's just a fact. And whether you're storing those in the hippocampus or in the frontal lobe, the fact is this: if you lose your long-term memory, you've lost your soul. Now, you can argue that, but I'd love to have a debate with you if you don't want to talk about it. So, BRAIN. The BRAIN Initiative seeks to deepen the understanding of the inner workings of the human mind to improve how we treat, prevent, and cure disorders of the brain. Now, having been in where you seek venture funding, I was in that for many, many, many years. When you begin to see the type of funding that is being committed to this project, you just got to go, whoa. So this is being handled by the National Institute of Health. You don't think they're serious about this? The old saying is, follow the money. Folks, when I start seeing budgets, and look at this. Now, the National Institutes of Health, they have a lot of different things that they invest in. But look at the proportional size of the funding, starting with the BRAIN project. Here in 2017, you know, it was kind of the short guy on the deal team. But in 2018, that we're current, it's getting up there now. Projected spending by 2019, 2020, and 2021. Now, this is what I found interesting. As I began to research this, I'm finding the same, let's say, cast of characters that were involved in the Human Genome Project. Yeah. And let me tell you, the benefits we're still seeing coming out of the Human Genome Project. We're in now the Human Genome Project 2, dealing with the mitochondrial DNA. But here's the thing. Those that invested in this are making billions. Look at this. I can't even think I can say that. Pharmacogenetics. Once we broke the code, well, actually, we didn't break the code. I think we broke the lock to get into the room, but we haven't really gotten into the safety deposit boxes yet. Well, this is the same approach that they're doing with the BRAIN Initiative. The federal agencies involved the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity, and this is the zinger that got me, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, the Food and Drug Administration. Folks, when you see DARPA involved, your red flags need to be going off all around the room. They don't get involved in this kind of stuff unless there is something potentially big. Now, look at the foundations and private research. You got Howard Hughes Medical, Allen Institute, the Kevlar, Simmons, University of Pittsburgh, University of California, Berkeley. It goes on. And the private companies, General Electric, GlaxoSmithKline, Endoscope, and U.S. Photonics Industry. Are some of you going, well, that seems to be an odd cast of characters? I would agree with you. It gets even stranger. So when I began to dig further into this, I found out it just wasn't the cast of characters we saw on the bill card. No. This is global. When you see, isn't it odd how they omitted Google there in the first one? Folks, take a look at this. It's a who's who. And all of these agencies private, public, you need to check them out. Something, as they say, be going on here. And there's apparently a time schedule that they have now analyzed, they have agreed upon, and this is the thing. I come out of the video industry and subsequently also the software industry. And the thing that makes an industry begin to advance is that when it develops standards, and then you have a governing body that oversees and ensures that those standards are met. This is what's happened here. And look at this. They're doing very well along their matrix. All of this is important. Now, I found this to be even more interesting. Remember, I showed you that initial funding chart? Well, guess what? It's what I told you what it looked like. They are advancing on a percentile basis. Look at what's happening here, folks. On the B.R.A.I.N project, 10 million, 86 million, 115 million, 140, 100 million. I don't know why they had a precipitous drop, but I'll guarantee it's never that away. Anyway, when you look at their total 10-year commitment on this project, $1,511,000,000 and counting. Now imagine, I can't, that you are a startup involved in a revolutionary new technology and industry. This is the kind of funding that you spend 20 hours a day working on. And now it's here. This is not make-believe. So here we can begin to see where they're starting out. Now, we're going to look into a document here that this project, interestingly enough, was started by President Barack Obama. And again, when you got DARPA, $100 million, the budget was for 2014. So there's money pouring in from not just the NIH, but all these other federal agencies. Then you start getting into the research grants, private companies. It's a gold rush, folks. They are working feverishly to get somewhere. I found this one interesting. So the IEEE has now come in and gotten involved in this. This is the electrical engineers, folks. Well, kind of made sense when I stopped and thought about it. The brain is electrical. So this project, what are they doing with all of that money? Well, let's take a look and see what their official communique was about. So this is the kind of the official paper that they put out. This is the committee, 146 pages long. We're not going to go through it all of it, but I wanted you to see how big this really is, and it is big. So the brain research, advancing innovation, neurotechnologies, the brain working group. Okay, this is going to get fun. This was put out 4 years ago. So we have a chance to really kind of see where the deliverables were coming in at and what was actually going to come of this. So I'm just going to get in here and get to some of more of the key points. So the executive summary states, the human brain is the source of our thoughts, emotions, perceptions, actions, and memories. It confers on us the abilities to make us human while simultaneously making each of us unique. Over recent years, neuroscience has advanced to the level that we can envision a comprehensive understanding of the brain in action, spanning molecules, cells, circuits, systems, and behavior. This vision, in turn, inspired the B.R.A.I.N Initiative, On April 2nd, 2013, President Obama launched the B.R.A.I.N initiative to accelerate the development and application of new technologies that will enable researchers to produce dynamic pictures of the brain that show how individual brain cells and complex neural circuits interact at the speed of thought. In response to this grand challenge, the National Institute of Health convened a working group of advisory committee to the director of the NIH to develop a rigorous plan for achieving this scientific vision. Now, this gets interesting, folks. So I won't read all of this. If any of you want this, I'll leave the link to where you can actually get this document. So they set out a number of key things here. Number one, discovering diversity, identified and provide experimental access to the different brain cell types to determine their roles in health and disease. Okay, that's not a problem, right? Maps at multiple scales, generate circuit diagrams that vary in resolution from synapses to the whole brain. Okay, that makes sense. The brain in action, now this one gets really interesting. Produce a dynamic picture of the functioning brain by developing and applying improved methods for large-scale monitoring and neural activity. Wow. It goes on to say, I'll read this, we should seize the challenge of recording dynamic neural activity from complete neural networks over long periods in all areas of the brain. There are promising opportunities both for improving existing technologies and for developing entirely new technologies for neural recording, including methods based on electrodes, optics, molecule genetics, nanoscience, and encompassing different facets of brain activity. These folks are serious, people. 4, demonstrating causality. Link brain activity to behavior with precise interventional tools that change neural circuits dynamics. And here's the challenge. They can map and predict how the neurons function. What changes is when you add your emotions. It changes the whole dynamics of the structure. And that's the challenge. They can't nail that down. Every time you have an emotional response or even think the thought of emotion, it changes the chemistry. 5, identifying fundamental principles, produce conceptual foundations for understanding the biological basis for mental processes through development of new theoretical and data analysis tools. Number 6, got ahead of myself, advancing human neuroscience, develop innovative technologies to understand the human brain and treat its disorder, create and support integrated human brain research networks. 7, from brain initiative to brain, integrate new technological and conceptual approaches produced in goals 1 through 6 to discover high dynamic patterns of neural activity are transformed into cognitive, emotion, perception, and action in health and disease. The most important outcome of the brain initiative will be a comprehensive mechanical understanding of mental functions that emerge from synergistic applications of new technologies and conceptual structures developed under the B.R.A.I.N initiative. I found this one really interesting in their subsets. 1, pursue human studies and non-human models in parallel. The goal is to understand the human brain, but many methods and ideas will be developed first in animal models. Experiments should take advantage of the unique strengths in diverse species and experimental systems. Cross boundaries and interdisciplinary collaborations. This is a whole new area of science. Integrate spatial and temporal scales. A unified view of the brain will cross spatial and temporal levels, recognizing that the nervous system consists of interacting molecules, cells, circuits across the entire body. The important function can occur in milliseconds or minutes or take a lifetime. 4, establish platforms for sharing data. 5, validating and disseminating the technology. 7, consider ethical implications of neuroscience research. Yeah, because if they crack it, most likely they have cracked the human soul. I know a lot of people don't want to believe that, but folks, at some point in time, you're going to have to grow up and realize that it's not the way it's always been. The mythos of religion and the dogmas that have been surrounded by this, the somehow or another, this mystique of the human spirit, it's going to be found out, folks. Man does not know how his own brain works, but when he does, he'll find out as well his own spirit. And then they get into the accountability factor. Now, the preamble is really interesting. We stand on the verge of a great journey into the unknown, the interior terrain of thinking, feeling, perceiving, learning, deciding, and acting to achieve our goals. This is the special providence of the human brain. These capacities are the essence of our minds and the aspects of being human that matters most to us. Remarkably, these powerful yet exquisitely nuanced capacities emerge from electrical and chemical interactions among roughly 100 billion nerve cells and glial cells that compose our brains. All human brains share basic anatomical circuits and synaptic interactions, but the precise pattern of connections and interactions are highly variable from person to person. And therein lies the source of the remarkable variation we see in human behavior. From the breathtaking dance of a ballerina, to the elegant craftsmanship of a master carpenter, to the shrewd judgment of an expert trader, our brains make us who we are, enabling us to perceive beauty, teach our children, remember loved ones, react against injustice, learn from history, and imagine a different future. The human brain is simply astonishing. No less astonishing to those of us who have spent our career studying its mysteries than to those new to thinking about the brain. President Obama, by creating the BRAIN Initiative, has provided an unprecedented opportunity to solve those mysteries. The challenge is to map the circuits of the brain, measure the fluctuating patterns of electrical and chemical activity flowing within those circuits, and understand how their interplay creates our unique cognitive and behavioral capabilities. We should pursue this goal simultaneously in humans and in simpler nervous systems in which we can learn important lessons far more quickly. But our ultimate goal is to understand our own brains. Now, I don't know about you, but you just have to step back, and when you see people pouting out their chest, and pounding on them, trying to say how smart they are, they don't know crap. None of us do. We can't figure out how our brain works. What kind of genius is that of a species? But we're going to get there. Again, this document is available to those who would like to have it. Let me know. So as you can see, this ain't no easy project. Complex, complex, complex. When you begin to look at all the trillions, that becomes a task that, it's complicated. The consciousness in mixed systems, merging artificial and biological minds via brain-machine interface. This is part of the project, folks. The goal is to transfer the human brain into something that is not going to be susceptible to disease, accidents, that can allow it to fully grow to its fullest capacity. Here's the myth that people hear all the time. People say, well, we only use 10% of our brain. No, that's a falsity. And don't you ever be saying that lie again. You use 100% of your brain, darling. If you ain't, then you've got a problem. No, what it is, we cannot access the full capacity of our brain. That's the problem. It's a conundrum for the scientists, neuroscientists, medical education. We can't figure out why it is that we only have such small access to such limited capacity. And again, as you just read, the structure's the same until the emotions hit, and then it changes. And again, the complexity grows. We use a simple thought. Right now, think of the color red. You see, everyone thought of the color red in your own mind, different shades, different variations, but it was still the same. But the problem is, no matter whether we have the same vehicle, the interior is used much differently by all of us. Our brains are complex, wonderful, and I think we have not even begun, and science has proven this as well, to fully begin to understand what yet awaits discovery. We're understanding how the data transfers. We're understanding how to get the subjects. We're figuring out what one would call the schematic drawings. We're getting the circuitry. But again, the complexities. And all you need is one variable to change, and then the whole formula has to be rethought out. The goal is to emulate the brain digitally. I believe one day we'll get there. We're crawling right now, but this is a global pursuit. It's not just the pursuit of one nation, but this is a rush of all nations coming in to begin to say, can we see this? For instance, when you would see a loved one who begins to show signs, let's say, Bell palsy, slurred speech, with the advances of what this project can do, it can change, repair the damage that so often happens in stroke victims. When stroke victims have these maladies that come on, we'll eventually have a way that we can detect this. And I believe that we'll be able to prevent it. And that is the goal here. Advancing our understanding of the brain. The prize, ladies and gentlemen, and don't let it fool you for a second from anyone, is immortality with the current temporal state of consciousness. There's more to follow. This goes even deeper. I hope you join me on the next installment.